President Muhammadu Buhari has signed this year's budget into law, but he's asking the National Assembly to approve a loan repayment of 22.7 trillion naira to the central bank. He says failure to approve the loan could cost the country over 1 trillion naira. Well, Adesua here has all the latest.
The journey of the 2023 budget began in October of 2022, when the president laid the estimate tagged Budget of Fiscal Sustainability and Transition before the National Assembly. The National Assembly called for defense by MDAs. After debates and consideration, the federal lawmakers passed the budget on the 28th of December 2022.
Aggregate expenditure 21,827,188,747,301 naira only. Those who are at this time part of the bill say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Here on the first working day of the year 2023, it's a defining moment as the president appends his signature to the 8th and final budget of his administration. The figures have, however, been reviewed upward from the original estimate of 20.51 trillion naira to 21.83 trillion naira by the federal lawmakers. Meanwhile, a major point of contention is the president's proposed restructuring of a 22.8 trillion naira Ways and Means loans from the Apex Bank, which the Senate declined.
Failure to grant the securitization approval will, however, cost the government about 1.8 trillion naira in additional interest in 2023, given the differential between the applicable interest rates, which is currently monetary policy rate plus 3%, and the negotiated interest rate of 9%, and a 40-year repayment period on the scrutinized debt of the Ways and Means.
He cited the imminent transition process as reason for his decision to assent to the appropriation bill despite the changes by the National Assembly. On the Finance Bill 2022, the president expressed his regret that its review is yet to be finalized. How best to achieve the revenue targets for the budget is also a task the president is canvassing.
This being a deficit budget, the associated borrowing plan will be forwarded to the National Assembly shortly. I count on the cooperation of the National Assembly for a speedy consideration and approval of the plan.
The legislatures, however, warn against overtaxing Nigerians in a bid to expand revenue, while promising to revisit all existing tax waivers and vet the eligibility of all beneficiaries. They take on the president on his observations.
What the National Assembly, both chambers, will ensure that we get revenues, we find more sources, better sources, stabilize the sources, and of course look into some of the legislations and some of the waivers and concessions granted. While we are trying to consider and pass the request, we will insist on getting the right documents for our committees to ensure that whatever they advise us to do in the two chambers are based on information and knowledge, and not just passing ways and means without knowing what it is.
It takes all arms of government to be on board to give a true working document for the country. The executive did everything they could, and we have even a wider view, a bird's eye view of what's going on in all the agencies. And we have also complemented what the executive has done. There's no you did, you didn't do. No, it's all for the good of the country. And that's what we've done.
Economists are skeptical that the 2023 budget will fix the pulse of the economy with high unemployment, poverty, and inflation rates. But with less than 53 days to the next general elections, maintaining a consistent January to December budget cycle is a legislative win the Buhari administration and the 9th National Assembly can be proud of.
Well, Arise News Exchange anchor Bosun Omofaye joins us now live from our Lagos studios. Great to have you on Newsnight, Bosun. A big day, I'm sure, for the business circle. The first working day of the year, 2023, and then we'll have a budget. But when the president says if the National Assembly does not reconsider its stance on the ways and means, it could cost the country 1.8 trillion naira. Explain that to us. Break it down to us.
Well, thank you so much, Adesua. I think what we have on our hand, and Mr. President could put it very nicely the way he has put it, because we've had this backlog of borrowings which had exceeded what the CBN Act stipulated as 5% over quite some time. We all know that the last few years have been very tough for the Nigerian government. COVID-19, we were just getting out of the 2016-2017 recession when we've got a problem of 2018. Then we ran into the COVID-19 2020-2021. So we've never really had a very, what you call blue ocean in the manner of economy, as it were. On one hand, the country was bleeding so much from insurgency, agriculture and other things were suffering. Exports were suffering because of the bad road leading to Lagos seaport, which is a major hub for import into the country. Then you've got a whole lot of insurgency, kidnapping, crippling the country around the middle, down to the south and more in the north. And then you've got the Niger Delta bleeding profusely from oil theft. So it hasn't been the best of years for Nigeria over the last few years, and we must all agree to that. So the cost of governance is so high, and I've listened to almost everyone in the room, and nobody has really put their finger on the fact that the cost of running government in Nigeria is extremely high at the federal and across the 36 states of the federation. So, as a business journalist, what do I see? The option will be to print money. Well, the Central Bank of Nigeria was not the only central bank in the world that printed money. But you print money only in an emergency. But we've had an emergency all the way for many years. So we keep printing money in a manner of saying ways and means of borrowing from the central bank to a point in which we've reached an unsustainable level of ways and means it has to be securitized. I go with the idea that we'll securitize it, a portion of it. But again, my position is that there should be a public disclosure of the total amount, what has been used for. The approval of the National Assembly was not secured, so it was between the executive and the Central Bank of Nigeria ab initio. But now that it has to be securitized into a public debt, the National Assembly is stepping in and said we need to see the full books on the table, which is not wrong. So the Central Bank will be at the table, Ministry of Finance, the Debt Management Office, and the executive branch will sit at the table and begin to find how do we securitize it, and when we securitize it, for what are we going to use it for? Who do we sell this special securitized instruments to? Who buys it? Pension funds, insurance, annuities, and a few other deep pocket investors who will be able to pick them up. So it's not going to be a walk in the park. Will we be able to resolve it before the elections and the next administration? That remains to be seen how we'll be able to get everybody on board and resolve this problem once and for all.
Yes, indeed, Bosun, and I wonder if there's any part of this budget that it really excites you and gives you any kind of optimism that it will really stimulate the economy. When you look at the oil benchmark at $75 per barrel, daily oil production 1.69, exchange rate 4.35 against the dollar, debt service 6.5 trillion out of the 20 or so trillion budget. What do you make of this? And of course, the challenge of budget performance.
Well, Ngozi, I'm not too sure I would love to answer that question. But again, let me put it this way. My first budget reporting as a journalist was in January of 1991, 32 years ago. And I've covered every budget for the last 32 years as a journalist. Now, my enthuse about what I've seen over the last 32 years, 3 decades and 2 years to this moment in January of 2023? No, I'm not. The budget had not really delivered growth and development for Nigeria in the real sense of it. We don't have a budget that is driven by private sector or prepared for the private sector and handed over to the private sector that allow the private sector to lead the economy from the front. Have we seen budgets over the last 3 decades plus 2 that I have been a journalist that would allow us for growth and development and lead critical infrastructure? No, we haven't seen that. So the level of poverty keeps increasing. Our productivity keeps going low. Our industrial production is almost zero. Our energy productivity output is going down every day. the level of infrastructure we have today was not what it should be for 200 million people. Do we have more poverty people? Yes. Human Development Index on education, healthcare, water, environmental services, do we have it at optimal level? No, we don't have it for 32 years. So if you ask me, what have we spent the whole billions and trillions over the last 32 years of my career as a journalist for? You ask me, I can see it. So I'm much older, and I came into the media when I was single, and I was just around 20 or so years of age, or thereabout. Now today I'm well above 50, and I still cannot say this is what every year's budget stands for. So if I take that question personal, I don't see this as delivering what it is. And I agree with some of the economists in the report that Adesua read about, played earlier, that look, economists don't agree that this will give us a blue ocean. We need to restructure the economy so that the budget can fit into it. We need to restructure the entire economy really and have a new type of budget that is private sector led, not the one that is prepared just by civil servants, just to make sure that salaries, wages, pensions are paid, and just a paltry is left for serious economic development. Today, we're talking at a debt size, just about the same size that President Obasanjo and his team met in when he came in 1999, and we had the Paris Club. We're all working our way all the way back almost to an HIPC position, which is highly indebted poor countries initiative, which was with the IMF and the World Bank in the 80s. We are almost at that space right now. We're doing about $85 billion. That is huge. With our external reserves at below $40 billion and our GDP close to $500 billion, but not really yielding as much. So we have an asset, what you call the GDP, of about $500 billion or $480 billion, but when it's not generating enough for us. So the country is bleeding on all fronts. And one of the ways to start to redress the issue of the budget is to cut the cost of governance at the executive level, at the legislative level, and across the 36 states of the Federation. Until we do that, this budget will not leave Nigerians out of poverty. It will not put more food on Nigeria's table. I can't see productivity in this budget as it were.
Okay.
So we are right now in a cul-de-sac in which we're trying to pay our debt and we're trying to just survive on a day-to-day basis.
Okay. I mean, it's not optimistic listening to you, Boston, but let me quickly get your thoughts, because the lawmakers, in 30 seconds, the lawmakers say revenue is a problem. We all agree on that revenue is a problem. They are saying they need to look at ways to expand the revenue base without overtaxing Nigerians. How possible is that? Will that move the needle? They said they need to look at the tax waivers that have been issued in the past to see if everybody that has a tax waiver should get the tax waiver going forward. Will that do anything at all, Bosun?
Well, we need to spend investment into areas that will create jobs. If we're building infrastructure, it has to be infrastructure that connects to job creation and ease of doing business with immediate effect. We haven't really seen much of that. So we need to go back to that. The new administration needs to do something. If the current administration can do something about that before they leave office on June the 1st, that would be really good. So we haven't been able to connect infrastructure building directly to job creation, in which the level of unemployment is at very unacceptable level. So we need to fix that. Where else can we make money? And I go back to cost of governance. It's so high at all levels. We need to reduce the number of cars. We need to reduce the number of executive cars, the luxury cars. We need to do a whole lot of things. So both the executive and the legislative branch are talking about not taxing Nigerians, but they also need to pay tax. Politicians need to pay tax. Everybody needs to show up. All the presidential candidates should show up with their tax papers before they go to the polls on February 25th, if that is still possible, if it's not too late. This is the time in which everybody needs to bring something on board, because you can't just have a way in which you said you're protecting the poor, but the rich men are also not coming with something to the table. The cost of governance is high. You need revenue. We have a lot of assets that we're not sweating. Right. Look at it, for example, Adesua, and some of you who know Lagos very well. The Federal Secretariat that used to be the federal seat of Federal Secretariat in Lagos had been an idle asset for so many years and decades. So we're sitting upon hundreds of billions of naira of assets that we need to turn around. So we have money in the country, but we just need to have the political will to bring it on board, cut down on debt, and have a sustainable fiscal economy. That's my take.
Omofaye, great take. Great take. Bosun Omofaye, of course, is the anchor of the Arise Exchange. Look out for it every evening, 7 p.m. All right, Bosun, thank you very much for that.